This episode is brought to you by Enviedhemp.com. Envied has been my choice for my CBD needs for almost a year now, and I can't begin to tell you how it has improved my life. They come in 3 formulas: Clarity, Relief, and Relax. I take a Clarity drop in the morning with my coffee to get me focused, then a drop of Relief for my aches and pains and inflammation after a run or a workout. Then I do a drop of the Relax before I go to bed to help me sleep. I've gotten some of the best sleep that I've had in years, and now with my Whoop band, my recovery band, I can prove it. And now they've come out with a new mixture called Immunity, which we all need to stave off COVID-19. The Immunity Boost is a mixture of turmeric, grapefruit extract, elderberry, licorice root, and vitamin C, which we all could use a little bit more, I'm sure. I just got my first shipment in and took my first drop this morning. They come in drops, which is my choice, a tincture, roll-ons for those aches and pains, and then also gummies, which I think a lot of people out there use the gummies. So you can get it however you choose. So go place your order today. Go to Enviedhemp.com and use the code GURU20 for a 20% discount for life. CBD is a great supplement to keep you healthy and safe during these crazy times. So let's get to this week's episode. This episode of the Golf Guru Show is sponsored by Straight Down Golf Apparel. I am very excited to announce that I have become a brand ambassador for Straight Down. Thank you so much for Mike Rowley and the team for inviting me into this family. And I am very excited to start to share the mission that I feel very strongly about. As Mike Rowley founded this Straight Down company in 1989, which started as a small t-shirt company, but shortly grew into a full-range golf and lifestyle apparel brand that is now worn by some of the top athletes in the industry and now by the Guru, which I'm super, super excited about. His love of golf translates into the products, and this stuff is awesome. I can't wait to share some of the stuff on Instagram and the videos I'm doing for Swing U and with all of you. So if you want to know more about this brand, go to straightdown.com and check it out. So let's get to this week's episode with Stephen Yellin.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am Jason Sutton, and I am the Guru, where it is my mission to interview the top golf instruction minds in the business for high performers in all fields of study, break them down, get them to share all of their stories, best practices, and information that have made them successful, and then ultimately share it with all of you so we can grow together as coaches and as humans. It is great to be back as I took a short break. I missed you guys. Hopefully you missed hearing these awesome interviews. Me and my team have been extremely busy coaching our players and helping them play better golf, but it's allowed me to do some contemplating, and I'm thinking about mixing it up with a few different formats that will include my staff and I sharing some day-to-day case studies, which will work 2 ways. We get better together as we share information on how we teach some of our training strategies, and hopefully you'll get something out of it as well. So if you don't mind, let me know if this is something that you would be interested in hearing, along with my continued long-form interviews. I also have a few high-performing guests that are outside the golf realm that I'm excited to share with you very, very soon. So send me a tweet or a DM at Golf Guru TV on Twitter or IG and give me your feedback. Also, go check out my new and improved website at golfgurutv.net and leave your email at the bottom to receive my weekly newsletter that includes videos and information on my teaching and coaching, and I think you'll enjoy that. Thank you so much again for all your support of the podcast, and make sure you download this episode and all the previous episodes on the Golf Guru Show, and hit that purple subscribe button so you don't miss any future shows that will be coming your way. My guest on this episode is Mr. Stephen Yellin. Stephen is a performance coach that has developed a revolutionary training program that allows athletes to access the zone, or what we call flow state. Stephen calls it the fluid motion factor. The Fluid Motion Factor is a revolutionary golf program that teaches golfers how to consistently access their best golf swing. Over the past 38 years, Stephen has developed a simple and powerful program that teaches golfers of all skill levels how to access the fluidity and effortlessness that comes along with being in the zone. The Fluid Motion Factor is not a lesson in sports psychology. It is a lesson in learning how to systematically access the one process in your mind that allows you to access what you already own and create a more consistent golf game. Stephen has a company that has also worked with 7 professional sports, including Major League Baseball, hockey, NBA, and the NFL. His new book called Simplicity lays out the entire program that he's developed and has taught with numerous coaches, including legendary teacher David Leadbetter and his golf academy. This was a very interesting and entertaining conversation where I feel like we only scratched the surface on his program, although I tried to get as much out of him as I could to help us coaches and so we can help our players out there. So there will likely be a part 2 in the near future if I can get a little bit more information out of him. But go buy the book and enjoy.
Stephen Yellin,
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yellin.
It's great to finally meet you.
Pleasure to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of a stream of performance coaches that I've had on in the last few weeks. Spent a lot of time with Ian Highfield at Game Like Training, and really made a big effort to improve my coaching. So I'm excited to learn some things from you and start to connect some of the things that you've been teaching. Very successful long-term program that you've been developing over the years. Before we kind of get into your framework and your program, take us back a little bit. I know if you haven't heard your story, which I know most people out there have, maybe give us a little background on. I know you were a big tennis player. You played in college when you sort of got this idea that you have now. But take us back a little bit before then, your sports background and sort of how it led into, I guess, the golf space.
Sure. So my background actually is not in golf; it's in tennis. I grew up in Florida, had a good, successful junior career in Florida as a tennis player. When I was a senior in high school, I won the state high school singles championship at #1 singles, and our team won the state title. Went on to have a good career at the University of Pennsylvania, played #1 singles. But when I was a senior at Penn, in a challenge match, intra-squad challenge match, I had this extraordinary zone experience that completely changed my life. And, I was sort of in the middle of the food chain of national junior and national collegiate tennis. I'd go to the nationals every year, win a few rounds, but, then someone would have Stephen Yellin for breakfast, and that would be all she wrote. But for that 1 hour on the tennis court, I experienced what these top players feel. And the overriding experience was freedom, absolute freedom. I could do whatever I wanted to do, whenever I wanted to do it, and it was ridiculously simple and easy to do. And I sat down after the match, and literally I could not move for 10 minutes. I was so overwhelmed with this experience because I knew immediately it was a gift. Nature had given me a gift. And it sort of opened up its infinite reservoir of intelligence and said, okay, Stephen, we're going to give you the experience that every athlete wants to have, and that experience is freedom. That's what any athlete just wants to have, freedom. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have to figure out exactly what happened. Well, of course, I was all in. So for 2 or 3 days, I was on it 24/7. I could not let it go. I had played so many matches against so many different opponents on so many different surfaces. what precipitated this? Why did I have it? And I knew it was way below the radar why I had it. Finally, on the third day, I woke up and I immediately knew why I had the experience. It was very black and white. There was no gray area whatsoever. And I thought, I was 21 at the time, I thought it would take a few years to develop a program that it would at least give, and of course I didn't even play golf then, I just played tennis, at least give tennis players a chance to move in the direction of having these kinds of experience, or at least being more consistent, which every athlete wants. But I was a little off in the time calculations because it really did not take a few years. It took about 45.
Oh, wow. So what was the first thing you did? Who did you reach out to? What did you study? I mean, maybe what were you studying in college? That obviously you had some probably background in the brain, and it sounds like from the research, like take us through
background.
how you got that next
No
step.
background. So when you watch a tennis match, what do you see? You see one person hit a ball, then you see another person hit a ball.
Mm-hmm.
So you can define tennis as a series of motions or a series of shots, but what else is going on? Well, a person hits the ball, then they wait, then another person hits the ball, then they wait. So if you switch your attention from the person that's hitting to the person that's waiting, you can define tennis as a series of waitings or as a series of gaps. And as it turns out, interestingly enough, the quality of the gap will determine the quality of the motion. So I realized that I had to teach someone how to experience the gap differently, and essentially how to experience it where time is not moving forward. It's not distorted. You're actually more in the moment. And of course, that led me to the realization that the quality of non-motion in sports is much more important than the quality of motion, because emotion will be formed in when there's no motion, and if there's an imbalance there in a split second, that imbalance is going to show up in your swing.
Yeah, in golf we have big gaps, which gives us a lot of time to start thinking about the long thing, the wrong things in between these shots, I guess.
No, we're not talking about anything about in between the shots. My concern is the 1.5 seconds it takes to generate a golf swing. Anything that happens in between that, I'm not concerned about, because if you can take care of that, you're going to take care of everything.
Right.
So I dove very deeply with a neuroscientist who worked with 2 Olympic teams, going into a very deep understanding of how fluid motion is produced in any sport. Mm-hmm. And I started to model my program to simulate and to operate in conjunction, because the brain physiology produces motion in a very specific way with a very specific process. And whether you understand this process, you know about this process, or you believe in this process or don't believe, it doesn't matter, because it's a law of nature. Mm-hmm. So I started to model my program on this one process, which I call the fluid motion factor, and over the years it got more powerful till it reached its sort of destination now, where it's very powerful.
Right. Are you talking about Dr. Fred Travis? Is that
yes.
Nurse?
Yes.
So, and that was kind of my leading question is,
yes.
How did you guys meet? Like, what was his background, and then what specifically did you guys work on and learn from him? Because he sounds like he was probably your main mentor.
No, he was my only mentor.
Yeah.
I didn't have another mentor.
So can you dig a little deeper and give us some insight into kind of what he taught you and what you guys discovered?
Well, first of all, Fred, who's a very dear friend of mine now, worked with 2 Olympic teams, Norway and Denmark. And, I would go to I would work in Orlando for the summer, for the season, then I come and spend time in Iowa, where I'm calling from now, where I'm speaking now. And we would sit down, and I would ask Fred one question, and the question was very simple. How is fluid motion produced, and why does it break down? I wanted to understand that from the most fundamental level. And he explained, like any neuroscientist, it's not like he has such a great insight. This is, any neuroscientist would describe the brain physiology and how it produces fluid motion identically, because just like the heart works one way, the lungs work one way, kidneys work one way, well, producing fluid motion works the same. So just to give you a little sort of a taste of how fluid motion is produced, in order to generate a motion, any motion, whether it's swinging a golf club or walking across the street, you have to generate a signal, an intention in the brain. Now, there's two parts of the brain that are really interesting. One is the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of the frontal part of the brain. It's also called the CEO of the brain. It oversees all processes in the brain. And the other is the motor system. Now, when someone produces a fluid motion, a fluid swing, during, let's say in golf, during that 1.5 seconds, the signal bypasses the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is also the intellect. It's the discriminating intellect. Goes right to the motor system, and the motor system is what communicates with the body to produce motion. Now, the problem occurs, and it's a huge problem, especially if you're a professional golfer, is when the prefrontal cortex goes online. It means you're thinking too much. And in the middle of that motion, it delays the signal moving to the motor system. Then in the middle of the motion, the body's looking for intelligence because the body doesn't have any intelligence. There's too many processes going on in the mind, and that's when the bulkier core muscles dominate the motion. So we would go deeper into this. There's certain feedback loops going on. There's certain ways the cerebellum operates. And then I would spend the whole year really massaging my program. I had the foundation, but I started adding on layers. And
did you have some guinea pigs, or was it?
All my students.
Really trying stuff out and what works and what
really
doesn't
good
work.
players.
Yeah,
you know, we're talking about players that won major championships.
Sure.
So, and the biggest guinea pig was me, because
I was about to say you probably tried a lot on yourself, right?
Oh no! It had to go through me. I had to purify it. And I came up with a lot of stuff. It worked well in the range. No, I didn't like it on the course. But when it worked on the course, I knew it would work for everybody. And I was absolutely correct. So it would have to go through these stages. And of course, right now, there's 5 sets of what I call fluid cues. Fluid cues set up by design what a player normally experiences by chance. In other words, they set up accessing the fluid motion factor, where that the prefrontal cortex goes offline, signal goes right to the motor system.
Is that what the motor system? Is that what you call the basal ganglia?
No.
Different?
Well, that's the motor.
That
system
seems like what would be, I guess, what fine tunes all the movements. Or?
No, that's the cerebellum.
Gotcha. Okay.
The motor system.
Trying
is
to stay with you here.
yeah, it's okay. It's not a neuro. It's really dummy down neurophysiology.
I
don't know that.
I'm a
much.
redneck from West Virginia, so
I got you. You know, I only wanted to know what I needed to know. I didn't
Gotcha.
need to get all the peripheral stuff. So the basal ganglia is where motion memory or muscle memory is stored. The cerebellum does 2 things. One, it tracks a motion, where a club is and where it has to be. And then it has the magical ability, if, let's say you're at the top and it doesn't feel, you've played enough golf, it doesn't feel right. If you've accessed the correct use of the cerebellum will liquefy the body enough to get that, somehow find some kind of slot on the way down and square the club at impact, so you'll save the shot. It won't be open, it won't be closed. If you haven't accessed the correct use of the cerebellum, essentially you have to make a perfect move on the ball because the body has no self-correcting mechanisms, none. So when someone's playing, and the best players in the world only hit 6 or 7 shots that they're totally satisfied with.
Sure.
So what separates the field, and why Dustin Johnson won FedEx Cup and why Justin Thomas won Player of the Year, is that their cerebellum is working at a higher level of efficiency than anyone else on tour. Because you have to understand, the swing does not control the swing. So if someone is swinging well, they have good timing, they have good tempo, they're finding the center of the club face, they can control the distance on wedges and putts, they have good balance, you have to congratulate the cerebellum. You have to, because that's what's controlling it. Mm-hmm. Now, what's missing in golf instruction and golf playing is there's no understanding of this. Oh, he's swinging great. He's getting the club in the right position. Look at that timing. Look how he controls his wedges. Look how he's compressing the ball. Well, that's a byproduct. That's a byproduct. You have to go to the motherboard. So with Fred, I went to the motherboard, and I understood it from the deepest possible level. I understood how the brain physiology works. I understood there's different levels of the brain, and that the cerebellum needs to operate in a very specific environment for it to do its function. And if it doesn't matter how great a player you are. It doesn't matter how many times you've won. It doesn't matter what you did on the next shot. You're going to be challenged to sink the swing if the cerebellum is not operating correctly.
So that's where the 5 cues come in that you talk about?
Yes.
Is that? Can you share those cues with us, please?
Well, there's 25, okay?
Okay,
so,
we'll get all right.
I'm not going to go through 25 fluid cues, okay? They're all in my book, Simplicity, okay?
Okay.
It took me a long time to pull the trigger on this book because it gives out the whole program. And I was charging thousands and thousands of dollars to teach. Yes. So I thought, why would I want to sell my program for $25? You know, it didn't make sense to me until I realized, you know what, Stephen, humbly speaking, you have an obligation and a responsibility to get this knowledge out because no one else has this program. And it's not my program, it's your program. This is how the cerebellum operates. So I pulled the trigger. I got it out. The reviews are great. Really, it's selling very well. But I'll give you a few fluid cues because that's what you want, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know, we have to sort of
got to give us a little bit of meat, right?
So we're going to throw a few nuggets out. Okay.
Okay.
So, as I was mentioning, the cerebellum has to operate in a certain environment in the brain physiology, very specific for every golfer. And that environment can be described as wholeness. Wholeness means it's not the absence of parts, it's the togetherness of all the parts. For instance, you're behind the ball, and you're figuring out what kind of shot you want to hit. You take into consideration a lot of different things. You have the lie, the wind, where you are on the round, what club you want to hit, how you want to hit it, the shape of it, how aggressive, how conservative. And you put all of these things in what I call a golf blender. Like you're going to make a smoothie. Like when you make a smoothie, you put an apple, orange, whatever. And right before you pull the trigger, you have to make a smoothie to experience wholeness in the brain. So you hit the blend button. Now, if you hit the blend button, right, we're talking about the microsecond before you pull the trigger. If you hit the blend button and you have not made a smoothie, meaning something is pulsating right before you pull the trigger, don't hit it left, don't hit it right. Get the club in this position. Shape it like this, okay? I need a birdie. I just bogey. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a threshold level of wholeness before you pull the trigger. Are we on the same page here?
Yes.
Okay. So if you don't have a threshold level of wholeness before you pull the trigger, chances are you're not going to have a threshold level of wholeness during the swing. So that means the cerebellum is not going to be able to make adjustments in your swing. So what happens is you go into crisis management, especially on the way down and in the transition. So again, this is the understanding from tennis that non-motion is more important than motion, because by the time you start the motion, it's too late. Unless the brain physiology is operating correctly before you start the motion, there's a good chance you're going to go into crisis management, right? Okay. So how do you experience a threshold level of wholeness before you pull the trigger? So I'll give you a fluid cue. It's the first fluid cue from the second set. Now, I have 5 sets of fluid cues, and each set of fluid cues gets more powerful. So the second is more powerful than the first, the third more than the second, and the fifth more than the fourth. So we're only in the second set of fluid cues here, but here it is. So what I ask the player to do is we're on the range, and I say to you, okay, Mary Jane, what I want you to do is simulate a really, really important shot in a big tournament, and you have to execute. You have to execute this shot, right?
And this is, I don't mean to interrupt you, but is this prior to walking in? Are we talking about pre-shot routine?
You're over the ball. Okay.
Over the ball, that's what you're getting to think about.
Yeah, you're over the ball, all right?
Okay.
And, there was someone at my door. You're over the ball. and you're about to pull the trigger. So what I do is I ask them to simulate a shot right before they pull the trigger. But let me know when you're about to pull the trigger, but don't pull the trigger, okay?
Okay.
You're about to pull the trigger, but don't pull the trigger. And let me know when you have that experience, okay? And they tell me now, then I pull the club out of their hand and I ask them to stand up, okay? And I ask them, okay, let's say you're on a course, right? And hypothetically, obviously very hypothetically, someone right before you pulled the trigger took the club out of your hand and you stood up. Do you think you would feel a contrast between how you felt when you stood up and there was no club in your hand versus how you felt when the club was in your hand and you were about to pull the trigger? Well, of course, everyone says yes,
Yeah.
right? You understand. We're on the same page here, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then I explain to them, if you drop the club and stand up, and there's a big contrast between how you felt when you stood up and how you felt when you were about to swing, then the fluid motion factor is shut down. You should feel more or less the same when you drop the club and you stand up. And because obviously when you don't have a club in your hand, you're going to feel a lot lighter. But if there's a big contrast, something is breaking wholeness. Something is breaking wholeness, okay?
So something's interrupting that pattern that you were discussing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't hit it left. Don't hit it right. Don't hit it short. Don't hit it long. Don't hit it short, right? So I tell them what we're going to do now is setting one, what I call setting one. Setting one means that right before you pull the trigger, if you dropped the club and stood up, you would feel more or less the same. More or less the same. You're always going to feel lighter. So if you do this, it's a fluid cue. It's called setting one. If you do this and you feel more or less the same, your brain physiology is experiencing a threshold level of wholeness. This changes everything. This could change careers on the PGA Tour. Mm-hmm. They don't have enough money to give me to learn that just this fluid cue, because they're all breaking wholeness. Not all of them, but when they're not playing well, they are.
Sure.
Now, when someone has a grooved motion, meaning they can drop a bucket of balls, they're feeling no pain, which all the PGA players have. Okay, any single digit handicap player has
enough technical training to
it's done.
To be able to experience that at times, right?
Exactly. Okay, so when you watch on tour and you see a PGA player or LPGA player miss a shot, there's only one reason why they missed that shot. Now, of course, if you do a video analysis, what is it, the Minolta, BizHub, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Of course something happened in the swing.
Those are suspect anyways.
What's that? That's suspect anyway.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, okay. So, of course something happened in the swing. The transition was too quick. They were too shallow. They were too steep. Whatever. That's just a byproduct. The only reason they missed a shot was they did not experience a threshold level of wholeness during the swing, so the cerebellum could not make last-minute self-correcting adjustments. End of story.
Is that fair to say, because you mentioned one of my favorite words that I use on a daily basis, which is intention, right? Coming into whatever their plan is, what they're trying to do with the golf ball, right? I think if they have the wrong intention, it doesn't match other things that you're discussing, that's going to definitely interrupt that pattern. Is that something would that be included in that wholeness?
I want you to define that a little bit more, because I didn't quite get what you were saying.
Yeah, like when we're getting ready to do anything, right? You're intending to do something, right? What's the outcome, right? Whether in golf, obviously it's a shot shape or a target or whatever it is. Like, would that be included in what you consider that moment. It sounds like you're trying to get them to really emotionally attach themselves to an experience that they already had, because you've got to basically relive that experience to do it again, right? Is that sort of what you're saying?
No,
it's not. Okay,
not at all. Okay,
explain a little bit deeper then.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with intention or trying to repeat a feeling or anything like that. This has to do with neurophysiology. This has to do with experiencing a very specific state of the brain. Now, if a feeling can be like a tuning fork to have you experience a threshold level of wholeness, that's fine. But if you start holding on to that feeling, oh, I want to repeat that feeling, I want to repeat that feeling, that's going to break wholeness. Anything could break wholeness. Anything.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about any level of sports psychology, emotions, attitudes, beliefs, self-confidence. They're all important, but they're not on this level. We have gone down to the motherboard, and that's where I operate from. I want to know, how fluid motion is produced and why it breaks down, and it all has to do with the correct functioning of the cerebellum.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Because again, obviously this is a coaching podcast, and we're trying to get as much as we can to help our players. What kind of feedback are you getting when you give them that cue and it doesn't take? When they stand up and they say they couldn't do it. What kind of you're having to get some feedback, obviously, in order to change that experience, right?
Anyone that I have taught has that experience, bar nobody, because they have to have that experience, whether they go through my program or they figure it out themselves. The brain physiology has to operate on that level. So if they don't have that experience, this is what's happening. Something is breaking wholeness. So what we do...
Yeah, that's my question, I guess.
Right.
What's some of those indicators that we can look for of what's going to break that wholeness?
Okay, some of the indicators, anything.
Yeah.
Anything can break it, okay? It doesn't even have to be about golf. So if someone is... this is what I do. This is what I take them through, okay? So I say, okay, now we're going to set one. And, of course, I'm giving him something before, but we don't have enough time to go into everything, okay?
Yeah,
so it's okay, I want you to ask... Here's the fluid cue. You ask yourself right before you pull the trigger, if someone took the club out of my hand, would I feel more or less the same? And that happens really quick. Now, let's say they start hitting shots, and the shots are not really satisfactory to them, right? Or they didn't feel too much of a difference. So what I do is I turn them around and have them set up 180 degrees in the opposite direction without a ball. And I ask them to set one. And then I ask them, now, is this how you were setting one when you were turned around and you had a ball in front of you? And if they were not having good experiences before, they all say, no, this feels different, okay?
Sure.
Then I say to them, I ask them, I say, okay, so now you have a baseline without a ball of what setting one really means, right? So now you're going to hit a ball, and you're going to tell me, based on that baseline of 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well one was set before you pulled the trigger. It doesn't matter, I don't care how you hit the ball, we're not using any of that evaluative criteria. After the shot, you're going to give me a number from 1 to 10 on how well one was set. Well, what happens first of all, when they start using abstract criteria rather than concrete criteria, which is a whole nother show, you can have me on any time, but that's really interesting, okay? When they start using, they're going to evaluate their shot based on abstract criteria, not concrete criteria, quality of how they set one. Within 6 or 7 balls, when I ask them this question, the question is, did you see the correlation between when one was set, 8, 9, or 10, the quality of the shot? Absolutely everyone I've ever taught said yes. In order for me to take them to the next level of the program, they have to see that correlation. They have to understand that there's a direct correlation between the quality of and degree of wholeness they experience, threshold level of wholeness before they pull the trigger, and the quality of the shot that they're going to hit. And this changes everything.
So the closer those two are together, obviously, the better performance we get from the player.
Well, once you get an 8 or 9 or a 10, you are good to go, okay? You may not hit a spectacular shot, but you're going to hit a very acceptable shot. If you're at a 2 or a 3 or a 4, if you don't have a threshold level of wholeness before you pull the trigger, good luck, baby. You know where you're at? You're at the blackjack table at the Bellagio, okay? And you're sitting with 14, and you have no idea what the card is going to get. You have no idea, because the motherboard of the swing is compromised. Crisis management on the way down. Crisis management on the way down, okay?
Gotcha.
Are you getting some religion? I know you're from West Virginia. You getting some religion here?
I'm feeling you. Yeah,
You're feeling me. Yeah,
I'm feeling you. Yeah, it's I'd like to have a few more of the cues. I've got so many questions here, but I think they're all probably going to be more pertain to prior, like preparatory moves. I mean, do you teach anything right before they get into setup, or?
Oh yeah, baby, oh yeah.
So
okay.
can we share a little bit, because everybody's got their own ideas of like what needs to be involved in preparation, and then also if you can share like an anchor or two after the shot.
I don't care about after the shot. Who cares about after the shot?
Well,
the shot's done.
You got to be able to get back into that state, right?
Oh,
you're looking for more flow state.
No, we're not talking. You're talking sports psychology now, okay? You're talking about, okay, let's, don't beat yourself up. You hit a bad shot. Believe in yourself. That's very important, okay? That is not my realm of expertise. My realm of expertise.
I knew that, but I want to get as much information out of you as I can. So talk about some preparation.
You want to squeeze this orange juice to get all the orange out, right? You want to squeeze the orange to get all the orange juice out, right? No one's even paying me for this, okay?
No one's paying me either.
They're getting free information. It's my pleasure, okay?
Yeah,
I love to help golfers out. Okay, I'll give you another one, all right?
All right.
What happens when you're behind the ball is you visualize a shot. It's impossible to visualize a shot. It's impossible to hit a shot without visualizing, even if you're doing it somewhat unconsciously, right?
Okay, I like that.
So what normally happens is, of course, you visualize the ball going exactly where you want it to go. You don't visualize it going left. You don't visualize it going right. You visualize the ball going exactly where you want it to go. So you have a very low level of acceptance. It has to go exactly where I want it to go. Okay? Now, when you have this strong low level of acceptance, then two unfortunate circumstances can happen during the swing. Remember, the prefrontal cortex, the intellect, is the killer in a swing. It's a killer. Now, what does the PFC, what does the prefrontal cortex want to do? Well, the prefrontal cortex is the CEO of the brain. What does the CEO do in business? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It always wants to,
to micromanage.
It wants to micromanage. This is what a CEO does. So when you have a low level of acceptance, you are giving a green light for the prefrontal cortex to go online. And there's two ways it goes online. The first way is you're over the ball, low level of acceptance, usually happens in the transition because that's where the drama, you're changing directions of the club. You're about to hit the ball. So because you had a low level of acceptance, the prefrontal cortex goes online and takes a subset of what you wanted to do. Don't hit it left, don't hit it right, don't hit it. And no, it doesn't take a subset. What it does, it checks to see if what you're doing was what you wanted to do. It compares where you
otherwise known as intention.
Right. It compares what you wanted to do to what you were doing, and in that comparison, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. You understand that, right?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay.
I'm with you.
The second circumstances where the prefrontal cortex goes online is when you're behind a ball and you visualize a shot. You input all the processes necessary to execute that shot. You program the computer. It's done. And, you program the computer differently for a flop wedge versus, a cut 5 iron. Mm-hmm. So what happens when you have this low level of acceptance is in the transition, you've already given the green light for the prefrontal cortex to go online because it's my way or the highway. So in the transition, the prefrontal cortex goes online, takes a subset of what you wanted to do. Don't hit it left, don't hit it right, make sure you're turning your hips, whatever it is, okay? And then it inputs another set of processes, and then this set of processes compete with the original set of processes, and the cerebellum is challenged to sink the swing. Did you get all of that?
Yes.
Okay. So if you do something completely counterintuitive that is not taught, really, by anybody, is that before you take one, but it's neurophysiologically sound, before you take one step into the shot, you're behind the ball, you haven't taken one step into the shot, you have a 10 level of acceptance, meaning I accept the results. It goes right, it goes left, it goes long, it goes short. I get the club in this position. I turn my hips. Yeah. It doesn't matter, okay? I completely accept it. So what happens is because you completely accept it, the prefrontal cortex during the swing has nothing to chew into because you've already accepted the results.
I like that, yeah. Getting people to do that has got to be difficult.
No, it's simple.
We're trying to do that every day.
No. Actually, I have to tell you, it's very simple. I tell you, I joke around about. I joke about this a little bit, but it's true. You're too young. Oh, maybe you're not too young. Okay, to remember. Okay, Betty Ford. Okay. But this program is the Stephen Yellin / Betty Ford Rehabilitation Program. You get detoxed. You go through rehab because you have been systematically breaking wholeness your whole life, Mr. and Mrs. Golfer. You have no conception, really, of how to produce a fluid motion and how a golf swing is synced. It's just the opposite. Because you equate attention with execution, meaning if you want to get the club in a certain position, I better put a lot of attention on that. You're going the opposite way, baby. Okay, because you're breaking wholeness, and once you break wholeness, you are at that poker table at the Bellagio. So you have to get detox. You have to go through this. Oh, yeah, all this drama. Oh. People say it's like, when they go through the program, it's like 80% less drama, 80% less focus, 80% less determination, because they're setting up those subtle conditions that they have to experience in order to produce a fluid golf swing. Gotcha.
Yeah. How much, I've got a ton of topics here. We'll just get to a couple of them, but I think in that space, we're trying to build confidence, obviously, in our players.
Yes, we want to build confidence.
Where do you think confidence comes from? I'm always curious to that.
Success. Okay. There's only one place confidence comes from. Okay, you can't go to a grocery store and buy a 12-ounce can. You have to have success. Now, once you have success, confidence is a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. If you don't have success, then you have to start creating a mood, Yeah. It's like a mood. Oh, I have to be success. I want to be confident. I want to be confident. I want to be confident. Well, if you're stinking it up on the course, how the heck are you going to be confident? It's a mood maker.
I totally agree. Yeah, but I think it has to be building off of past experiences, obviously.
Exactly.
The training and whatnot.
Exactly.
And then I think how important self-talk is, right? I mean, I'm sure you
all these things
use
are
that
important.
a lot, right? Yeah. I mean,
no.
How do you
no
get your players to talk to themselves?
No, I don't teach them to talk.
You
to
don't
themselves.
teach that? Okay.
No, I don't even go. I'm not even close to doing that. Okay.
Okay.
If I set up a condition where they're hitting good shots, you got everything. What's left? Okay. My whole goal when I teach, I have one goal when I teach: get someone's cerebellum to work correctly, and then get out of the way, baby. Get out of the way.
Yeah, because all the rest of the stuff kind of follows, right?
It.
Self-talk, the body language,
it all
the
changes.
Confidence. Yeah.
It all changes. Exactly.
Yeah.
it all becomes a byproduct of playing, of hitting good shots, of shooting low score. You don't have to think of confidence at that point in time. Now, I'm not knocking sports psychology. I think it's great, okay? And it's helped a lot of players, but that's not my gig. I just want to produce fluid motion in the swing and let the chips fall as they may after that.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, I listened to a couple of your videos, and you talked about the second ball golfer. And that's
the second ball.
Yeah,
I
want to know who
syndrome.
we call that guy Bubba. I don't know where that. I don't know who named
no,
it
Bubba.
Bubba.
Yeah, no, Bubba. Well, you're from West Virginia, so it's
well,
Bubba.
I don't think it. Yeah, well, I'm not sure it originated there, but I'm not sure who named it Bubba. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. You'll be on a playing lesson. I've seen it happen plenty of times where a guy hits a bad shot or a putt and throws down the next ball, and they flush it or they hold the putt, and it's like what's the difference, right?
Yeah. So that my area of expertise is what happens during a golf swing. It's not any kind of self-talk or confidence. Very important. You better have confidence. You got no chance, especially if you're on a PGA or LPGA tour.
That's right.
So yeah.
What you did a little? It looked like you did a little bit of work in other sports as well.
Oh yeah, this program has been taught in 12 sports.
I was going to say, I'm sure it's applicable to other baseball and obviously tennis and Any stories or any case studies that you could kind of share before we wrap up? Thank you so much for your time.
I have to tell you that I have just been focused I'm sort of a one-dimensional, laser beam kind of focus on one thing, and that's been golf. My original partner, Buddy Biancalano, who was the starting shortstop for the Royals when they won the World Series in '85, has taught the program in more sports than I have, and he's had some considerable success stories, especially in baseball. But I'll tell you, one success story I had was about 6 years ago. Someone read my first book, 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes. He writes me an email saying, "Stephen, it's like you've written my autobiography, right?" And this is a professional bowler. His name is Rhino Page. And immediately I respond. I say, "Rhino, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I can teach you this program, It's applicable to all sports." He says, "Well, I'm bowling in a tournament in Thailand now." Okay, I said, "No problem. I could teach it over Skype. I don't have to see you bowl." So I told him, "Let's connect in 2 days," because I had to go to the bowling alley to figure out what worked in bowling. All right, because I have to see what worked, and I'm not a good bowler, but I'm good enough to know what works and what doesn't work. So the next day I get a hold of him, and over the next 3 or 4 days I teach him the whole program over Skype. I figured out what worked. Well, he took the program in to the first tournament he was playing after that, and he bowled a 299. So I knew it was something good. 2 years or 3 years ago, he won the U.S. Open in bowling, the biggest bowling tournament in the world, and he credits my program with that success. So if you wanted a success story, that's a good one.
That's fantastic. So I know you worked with David Leadbetter, back to golf briefly.
I did.
Any good David Leadbetter stories you could share with us?
Well,
how was it to work with one of the best ever?
The best David Leadbetter story is when he was checking me out, and he was thinking, should I hire this guy or should I not hire this guy, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, "David, the best thing for you to do is watch me give a lesson to somebody, all right?" So he was down at, Concession, okay, in Bradenton. Mm-hmm. So he set up some mini tour player. We went to the range. It's really classic, all right? And because I get someone in that threshold level of wholeness really quick, like this, right? So I give him the first fluid cue. He hits 5 balls. He turns around to me, and he says, "This is ridiculous. I've been searching how to get in this space," because good players know this space, "all of my life," okay? And when he said that, David's jaw dropped. Like, I set this guy up and I gave him $100. Okay, say some good things, right?
Right.
So then he turns around and he hits some more balls, right? And he starts laughing, like almost uncontrollable, because when someone has this feeling of freedom, it's like a spiritual experience. It's like blissful, right?
Yeah.
And he turns around and he says, "Do you work with pros?" And David is like, he's taking it all in, like, I set this thing up. And I said, yeah, that's what I do for a living. I work with pros. So then I worked with David's daughter, who was going to quit competitive golf, and she she goes through the program, she ends up winning the Southern Amateur and gets to the semifinals of, I don't know, the second biggest amateur tournament in match play, in the United States. So those are my stories.
That's great. Very, very cool. So
we have to do this again because I got a lot of more stuff to tell you. Okay,
we can keep going. I mean, my podcasts are long. So you give me a topic and let's go. Unless you got somewhere you got to be.
Yeah, you know what? Let's do this again another time.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Is
totally
that okay?
cool. Absolutely. So, all right. So one last question, and then I want you to
one last question.
Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and how they can buy your book.
Smoke signals, okay? Smoke signals. No.
Homing pigeons.
Homing pigeons, okay? 2142 Sapphire Lane, okay? They can send the pigeons. No, if they, my website is fluidmotiongolf.com. Fluidmotiongolf.com, one word. My book is Simplicity. I would encourage, you can get it on Amazon. I would encourage everyone to buy the book because it has the whole program. People are having fantastic results with it. And if you do buy the book, at the end of the book, I give out my email. I'd love to hear your experience, and don't be shy in contacting me because
absolutely.
I love speaking to people who have gone through the program.
Beautiful. All right, last question. Everybody has to answer it. All right. So if you had to get a message to the world, to billions of people, and put it on a billboard, a gigantic billboard, what would be your message and why?
Enjoy life. I think
Love
it's
it.
Self-explanatory.
Simplicity.
That's very simple.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Stephen. This has been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed getting to know you, and look for future shows.
Yeah, and let's do it again because you're a good interviewer, okay?
Thank you so much. All right, I'll talk to you soon. What's up, everyone? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Stephen for coming on the show and sharing his story and his Fluid Motion Factor program, or just the bits and pieces that could whet our appetite to definitely go buy the book and learn more about this revolutionary deal. Make sure you go and buy his book called Simplicity that you can find at Amazon.com. Thank you again for our sponsors, Straight Down Apparel, InVeedHemp.com, and Swing U. And make sure when you go buy your CBD products at InVeedHemp.com, use the promo code GURU20 for a 20% discount for life. Check that out for sure. It's made a big difference in my life. Make sure you go to the App Store and download the Golf Guru app for you players and coaches out there that want more teaching and coaching information from the Guru. You can also follow and reach me on Twitter and Instagram at Golf Guru TV. And check out my new website, as I brought forward in the intro, at golfgurutv.net. And make sure you leave your email at the bottom so you can receive my newsletter every Friday at 10 o'clock. If you have any questions or comment about the show, just email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com or hit me up on the DM. Music is brought to you by Kevin MacLeod and Zach Mullet. And as I always leave you with, RIP Mr. Jim Rohn, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. Thanks so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.